The definition of a clause is basically that a clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. It always has to have a subject and a verb. If it's missing one or the other, it might be considered either a phrase or a fragment. We have two types of clauses. One of them is called main or independent. A main or independent clause expresses a complete thought and stands as a complete sentence. Alright? The other one, which is called subordinate or dependent, this one doesn't express a complete thought, and we can identify them by looking at the different clause markers that they can use. Most of the times, or the most common ones we know, are subordinating conjunctions. Now I'm going to be giving you two examples for each one of them. The first one here, it's an example for a main or independent clause. So the library has a new computer. It's an independent clause because it expresses a complete thought. We understand it. It can stand by itself, and we are making sure right now that it does have a subject and a verb, right? So, for example, the subject for this one would be the library, and the verb would be has, right? So, yeah, it is the clause, right? And it's an independent clause because of what I just said. All right. The other example is if the door is not closed. If the door is not closed, well, right after you read it, it's just what it's missing something, right? It does give you that feeling like it's missing something, right? It's missing a complement, and most of the times, as we're going to see in the next topic, it's because it needs another clause, an independent or main clause. One thing that I mentioned before is that an easy thing to do for us to identify a subordinate or dependent clause is just to look at the clause itself and look for the clause marker. In this case, it's very easy to identify, and it's actually a subordinating conjunction. Can you spot it? Yes, right? Because it's really easy to do. So the clause marker in this case is if, right? Easy. Which one is the subject then? Well, in this case, we have the door as a subject, and the verb is considered is not. Well, the verb to be, it's the main verb, right? But it's actually being modified by the adverb not here. All right. So basically, what we have here then, it's a clause. Both of them are clauses because both have subject and verb. However, the difference is that one of them it's understood easily because it expresses a complete idea and it can stand by itself. It doesn't require anything else for it to be a clause, an independent clause, right? However, the other one, as I said before, it's like it's missing something. It's missing a complement. Now let's practice a little bit. Right, so in this exercise, you were asked to just identify each clause. You need to identify if it's an independent clause, well, just write independent. If it's a dependent or subordinate, remember it has two names, just as independent. Independent it's main, and subordinate is dependent, right? It's a little bit confusing, but well, I rather use dependent and independent. All right, good. So we have the clauses from 1 through 10. The first thing I would do if I were you is that I would go to the clauses and try to see if I can identify clause markers for me to define those ones as dependent. Let's take a look. So looking at the list, I just go to number 2, right? Because it does have this word here. Who? Who, it's a relative pronoun and it's also considered a clause marker. Perfect. Then I have number 3 actually. After it's a subordinating conjunction. If I continue, I go to number 6, and then I see this word until, which is also a subordinating conjunction. Number 7, in number 7 we have although. Although it's also a subordinating conjunction. Number 8 has before, which is also a subordinating conjunction. And that's it. All right, so we have 2, 3, 4, 5 clauses that start with a clause marker. All right, if all those ones start with a clause marker, that means that all of them are dependent clauses, right? I'm just going to write a D here. D, and D. Perfect. All right, so there's a situation here with, for example, number 2. Because if I go back to the explanation I just gave you, like, we have to make sure that we find the subject and the verb in the clause for us to see it, or for us to call it a clause, right? It needs to have a subject and a verb. So in this one, we happen to see or to identify easily that we do have a verb, which in this case is have. But where's the subject? Well, this is a topic we need to review a little bit more, but in this case, the word who, it's considered as the subject. All right? So we're going to develop this one later. But for the rest, it's pretty easy. If we go to number 3, we do have the concert is a subject and has begun as our verb. So it's a clause. Dependent, but it's a clause. Let's go to number 6. The last out will be our subject and has been made our verb. For number 7, we do have Jamie, subject, did not expect, verb. And for number 8, the runner, it's our subject, and could get is our verb. So yeah, basically, so at the end, all of them, yes, they are considered clauses because all of them have subject and verb, right? And for the rest, number 1, number 4, 5, 9, and 10, all of them are independent clauses, right? Because if you read them, we get the idea that all of them express a complete idea and they can stand by themselves. They do not depend on something else to make sense. All of them have subject and verb. Let's see, number 1. For number 1, we do have the ancient Egyptians subject, worshipped, verb. For number 4, if we go to number 4, some trains subject, travel, verb. Number 5, the map of Thailand, subject, verb, is. For number 9, Miss Baloney, subject, teaches, verb. We, subject, were waiting, verb. Excellent.